The Dallas Cowboys story is one of ambition, resilience, heartbreak, and triumph. It is a saga that begins in the early 1960s when professional football was beginning to grow into the massive cultural force it would later become. Before the Cowboys existed, Texas was already a state obsessed with football, but it was college programs like Texas Longhorns, Texas A&M Aggies, and the high school football traditions that dominated the landscape. The idea of a professional franchise in Dallas was far from universally accepted at the time. However, Clint Murchison Jr., an oilman and businessman with deep roots in Texas, had a vision that Dallas could sustain and celebrate its own NFL team. His determination, paired with the brilliance of Tex Schramm as general manager and Tom Landry as head coach, would form the foundation of what became America's team. The Cowboys were officially established in 1960, entering the NFL as an expansion franchise. Unlike many teams that find quick bursts of success, the Cowboys struggled in their early years. They finished their inaugural season with a dismal record of 0-11-1, failing to win a single game. This might have discouraged another ownership group, but for Murchison, Schramm, and Landry, it was simply part of the long-term plan. Landry in particular was a visionary, coming from the New York Giants coaching staff where he had served as defensive coordinator. His innovative mind led to the development of the 4-3 defense, a formation that revolutionized football and remains a foundation of modern defensive schemes. Yet, in Dallas, he was given something few coaches ever receive: time. The ownership understood that greatness would not arrive instantly, and they allowed Landry to shape the team with patience. Through the 1960s, the Cowboys drafted carefully, seeking players who could build a long-lasting dynasty. Don Meredith became the team's quarterback in the early years, while Bob Lilly, their first-ever draft pick in 1961, became known as Mr. Cowboy. Lilly embodied toughness, consistency, and leadership. He was the centerpiece of a defense that would grow into one of the most respected units in football. Slowly, the team improved, and by 1966, the Cowboys achieved their first winning season. 2 years later, they would make the playoffs, signaling that they were finally ready to compete with the league's best. The Cowboys' rise coincided with the growth of the NFL itself. The 1960s saw the beginnings of the NFL-AFL merger, a new television contract, and the birth of the Super Bowl. Dallas found itself in the perfect position to become not just a successful team but also a cultural icon. Their star logo, simple and elegant, became synonymous with Texas pride and national recognition. Fans across the country who had no direct tie to Dallas began rooting for the Cowboys, drawn by their exciting style of play, their innovative coaching, and the charisma of their players. Despite their talent, the late 1960s. After Jimmy Johnson's departure in 1994, the Dallas Cowboys found themselves at a crossroads. They had just won 2 straight Super Bowls, were loaded with young talent, and appeared poised to dominate the NFL for years. But the friction between Jerry Jones and Johnson left the team without the coach who had been the architect of their dynasty. To replace him, Jones turned to Barry Switzer, Johnson's old rival from the college ranks at Oklahoma. Switzer was charismatic, a player's coach, and unlike Johnson, had no interest in battling Jones for control. Many critics argued that Switzer inherited a team built by Johnson and that his job was simply to keep the train moving forward. For a time, it worked. In the 1995 season, the Cowboys marched through the league with the confidence of champions. Troy Aikman was in his prime, directing the offense with precision. Emmitt Smith remained the workhorse, running behind one of the greatest offensive lines in history. Michael Irvin was unstoppable on the outside, combining physicality and emotion that set the tone for the entire team. On defense, Darren Woodson provided leadership in the secondary, while Charles Haley brought relentless pass-rushing intensity. The Cowboys dominated their opponents and once again advanced to the Super Bowl, facing the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 30. The game was hard-fought, with the Steelers mounting a late comeback, but the Cowboys held on for a 27-17 victory. Larry Brown, a cornerback often overlooked during the season, became the unlikely hero with 2 interceptions that earned him Super Bowl MVP honors. With that win, the Cowboys claimed their third Super Bowl in 4 years and their fifth overall, tying the San Francisco 49ers for the most championships at the time. The victory also marked the peak of the Cowboys' 1990s dynasty. They were firmly established as the NFL's premier franchise and the embodiment of success, swagger, and star power. But as quickly as they had reached the mountaintop, cracks began to appear. The Cowboys of the mid to late 1990s struggled with off-field controversies, locker room discord, and the natural wear and tear that comes with years of playing at such a high level. Michael Irvin faced legal troubles and suspensions, while other players struggled with discipline and focus. Injuries began to take their toll on Troy Aikman, who suffered multiple concussions that hampered his effectiveness. Although the Cowboys remained competitive, they could not replicate the dominance they enjoyed during their championship years. Barry Switzer's tenure was marked by inconsistency. While he guided the Cowboys to one Super Bowl win, he struggled to maintain discipline and cohesion within the team. By 1997, the Cowboys began to slip, and Switzer eventually resigned after the 1997 season. The dynasty that had once seemed unstoppable was now in decline. The early 2000s were a difficult period for the Cowboys. They went through a carousel of coaches. As the Cowboys entered the latter half of the 2020s, they carried with them both the weight of history and the promise of the future. Fans who had lived through the glory days of the 1970s and 1990s still longed for the feeling of confetti falling after a Super Bowl victory, while younger generations had grown up knowing the Cowboys more for their iconic brand than for recent championships. Yet, the allure of the star on the helmet never diminished. Every season began with hope, every off-season filled with debate, and every game scrutinized under the brightest of national spotlights. The Dallas Cowboys were still America's team, not because of their most recent playoff victories, but because of the identity they had built over decades, a team that symbolized spectacle, ambition, and possibility. The heart of their modern resurgence revolved around the balance between established leaders and new stars. Dak Prescott, having overcome the devastating ankle injury of 2020, solidified his role as the face of the franchise. His leadership extended beyond the field, where he became an outspoken advocate for mental health and resilience, earning admiration even from those who weren't Cowboys fans. While Prescott's critics often focused on his playoff record, his ability to rally his teammates, put up impressive numbers, and carry himself with composure in the most pressure-packed position in sports made him the steady anchor Dallas needed. Micah Parsons, meanwhile, became something more than just a defensive standout. Drafted in 2021, he quickly emerged as one of the most dominant players in the NFL, capable of rushing the passer, dropping into coverage, and disrupting entire offensive game plans. His speed and versatility brought comparisons to legends, but what set Parsons apart was his relentless energy and desire to change the culture of Dallas defense. Opponents circled his name on the scouting report, but few could do much to stop him. By the mid-2020s, Parsons wasn't just the Cowboys' best defensive player, he was the engine of their identity, embodying the aggressive swagger that had been missing since the dynasty days. Around them, Jerry Jones and his front office continued to assemble talent. CeeDee Lamb developed into one of the premier wide receivers in the league, combining sharp route running with explosiveness after the catch. Trayvon Diggs, though occasionally criticized for his gambling style of coverage, made highlight reel interceptions that could turn games in an instant. The offensive line, once the team's defining unit, went through a period of transition, but Dallas invested heavily in keeping it strong, understanding that no team could thrive without dominance in the trenches. Despite the talent, however, the postseason woes continued to haunt Dallas. In back-to-back seasons, they fell short against the San Francisco 49ers, reigniting an old rivalry that had defined the 1990s. Each loss carried a painful reminder of how close